continue to monitor the situation in the Middle East. We move on now, and China has announced that Premier Li Qiang will visit Brazil and Egypt next week. He's set to attend the 17th BRICS Summit in Rio de Janeiro from July the 5th to July the 8th. Beijing calls BRICS a key platform for emerging markets to boost cooperation and push for a fairer multipolar world. After Brazil, Premier Li will make an official visit to Egypt from July the 9th to 10th. China's foreign ministry says he will hold talks with Egyptian leaders to strengthen bilateral ties and discuss regional issues. This visit comes as Beijing seeks a greater role in global diplomacy. China has positioned itself as a Middle East mediator, brokering the 2023 deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran as well. Well, joining us to discuss this development is Zhong Qi, a CGTN anchor who is joining us from Beijing. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Let's first look at this BRICS meeting. What do you think will be the key topics discussed in Brazil?
Joshua, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. I've covered many BRICS Summit in the past, and I can tell you the agenda priorities shift from year to year. So they're a little different each year, depending on, of course, the overall economic landscape in the world and the geopolitical situations. But there are recurring topics and themes which indicate just exactly how important they are. For example, the issue of trade and investment facilitation, which always features prominently at this summit. So leaders can very much sit down and talk about further reduced trade barriers, improve business environment, and further promote the free flow of goods and capital within the BRICS mechanism. I do want to also mention mechanism building. I know that sounds dry, but it's absolutely important because BRICS is getting bigger now. With new members come in, they each coming with a different set of priorities, with different development needs, and they're themselves in different economic phases. So it remains absolutely critical to coordinate these different needs and see where synergy can arise, and how do we move in the same direction? How do we build consensus? So I do believe that there will be discussions necessary concerning the improvement of internal cooperation mechanism and improve the efficiency of the organization. And now the topic on everybody's mind, artificial intelligence, which has been a trendy and hot topic throughout the past year and this year also. But there are different layers to this issue. The first is on the technology side. There exists a digital divide between developed countries and developing countries. Certainly, developed countries hold advantages in developing AI-related technology, but developing countries don't want to miss out on the opportunity here. And the other one concerns the global AI governance. This is still a relatively new phenomenon across the world, and developing countries want their say at the very start of this phenomenon in terms of how to regulate AI to ensure that AI is used in a responsible manner to benefit their interests. So I do think there will be efforts to reach consensus on the needs to regulate AI, and that the application of AI to be more fair, transparent, and in line with global interests.
Yes.
As we mentioned, Brazil is playing host this year to the BRICS Summit, but Brazil will also be hosting the United Nations Climate Change Conference. So it is my personal belief that Brazil will use this opportunity to shed light on our climate actions and our climate response, focusing on improving the financing structure for a climate change response. Member countries may discuss how to strengthen cooperation in green energy, carbon reduction, and etc. Joshua?
Yes, absolutely. I now want to look at China's role and contributions to the BRICS agenda. How will that play out in 2025 and then the years to come?
As you know, Joshua, China is a founding member of BRICS. It's the biggest economy among member countries, and it certainly values trade cooperation within the bloc. It has forged a very robust and healthy relationship, and I should also mention ever-growing relationship with member countries. So it definitely wants to safeguard that relationship and keep it growing. One of the initiatives put forward by China can be seen in the 2025 BRICS Economic and Trade Forum, which was held earlier in Beijing this year. On that forum, talks focused on promoting trade among member countries through what is known as standard cooperation. And what that means is that obviously products originating from different countries are manufactured with different standards. It would benefit the efficiency of the trading process if products can meet unified standards, can meet common standards. It would speed things up. It would mean streamlining the trading process. It's only one of the initiatives that China put forward this year. But overall, I do think China will reinforce the support for multilateralism, especially multilateralism in trade. Why is that important this year? Because in 2025, we're witnessing a time when trade protectionism is on the rise so blatantly, and that tariffs are being deployed as weapons against certain countries. China opposes that, and China has made it abundantly clear that it firmly defends the multilateral trading system and supports the role of the WTO, and at the same time, it wishes, against this backdrop, to implement a practical trade and economic cooperation on the ground with member countries. And China has always supported the expansion of BRICS, what is known as BRICS plus cooperation, in order to improve the representation of BRICS and enabling more developing countries and emerging economies to participate in international affairs, which is a great measure in practice to support multilateralism. I do want to point out that there are accusations out there that say China wants to dominate BRICS. And it is absolutely a mistake to view China and China's role in BRICS that way, because BRICS was, founded based on principles of inclusiveness, openness, women cooperation. The mechanism put in place at the very start of the founding of BRICS prevents a scenario from that from happening. For example, if you look at the rotating presidency, each country takes presidency in a rotating manner, and each country has the opportunity to set the agenda for the summit and determines the direction in which the summit develops. And also, if you look at the New Development Bank, all founding members have equal voting rights, which constitutes a democratic governance structure. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there, misconstrued concept about China's role in BRICS. It's a great opportunity to take the time and clarify things up a little bit. I do want to briefly mention China's position on climate issues and green transformation. China promotes the full and effective implementation of the Paris Agreement, supports differentiated responsibilities, and urges developed countries to fulfill their obligations under the agreement. Joshua.
Yes, absolutely. And you talking about BRICS there, of course, in 2023, 6 new members joining. And I want to look at how that expansion strengthens the BRICS commitments to raise the voices and standing of developing countries.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, Joshua. I mean, the expansion has been a very welcome move embraced by member countries. And I do believe new members bring new vitality, new impetus, and new energy into the group. First of all, they get to strengthen their policy coordination and strategic coordination with the new members. Now, BRICS accounts for about 45% of the global population, about a third of the global GDP. So on paper, in numbers, this is a mightier group. This is a mightier force. And what that means is that new members can strengthen strategic coordination on key regional as well as international issues, and together safeguard international justice and fairness. This is about enhancing the overall international footprint, international influence, if you will. But these new members, they also come in with their respective strengths, advantages, and resources. For example, if you look at the new members, some of them are oil-rich countries. So they bring new perspectives and new thinking on energy. We're talking about both energy security and energy transition. Energy security, on the energy security front, obviously it encompasses discussions on stabilizing energy supplies, energy prices. On the transition front, just because these are major oil exporters and fossil fuel powerhouses doesn't mean they're not thinking about transition. They want to diversify their economy. They want to diversify their exports. So they're thinking also in line with renewable energy projects, and that's very important. Their perspectives will be very much needed and appreciated at the BRICS grouping. And if you look at the UAE, it's got rich experience in constructing financial centers, and its technology innovation has been spoken very highly of. I believe UAE coming to the table will also enrich the topics and dialogues at hand here. And Egypt and Ethiopia can offer opportunities in agriculture and infrastructure. Obviously, it definitely, I think, strengthens South-South cooperation, not just these new members. We have a few dozen countries out there that have either expressed interest in joining as full members or as partner countries. This says to me that the appeal of BRICS is still there. It is still growing, and the new members show the desire of emerging economies to unite and to cooperate, which helps to narrow the North-South gap and promote more balanced development.
Yes, and you mentioned earlier, of course, China a founding member. India also a founding member of BRICS and have played a positive role in its operation. What do you make of India's participation in the group?
As you say, India also is a founding member, and I think it's fair to say India has played a very important role in the development of BRICS in terms of investment in economy, both in terms of making investments and receiving investments, also in terms of digital economy, in terms of tapping into the strengths that the Indian economy has to offer. If you look at the Indian economy itself, I think it still registers an impressive growth number, right? Just above 6%. But domestically, that growth number is slowing because you have high inflation, you have slow wage growth, weighing down on the economic growth, which in turn strains the economy. What BRICS offers India is great market space, and India has taken advantage of that. India has strengthened trade exchanges with members. Its trade volume has been increasing steadily. Intra-BRICS, it has also obtained a large amount of investment on infrastructure building and sustainability projects, resulting in India's economic foundation improvement and industrial competitiveness. Also want to mention, I think a lot of people may not be aware of this, but India has been a strong supporter of international financial institution building within the BRICS mechanism, which has paved the way for the establishment of the New Development Bank, a key milestone of BRICS. This is a multilateral financial institution that gives loans to verified projects in terms of infrastructure building and sustainability projects. And I seem to remember a rural water supply project in Himachal Pradesh in India, where they draw the water from the plain area of the country, store it in huge water tanks, and through pipelines deliver the water to individual rural households. And as a result, 500,000 villagers now have access to tap water. So as a result, 500,000 people, their lives have been made easier with projects sponsored by the New Development Bank. I don't know if I'm sure they're not aware that this project was made possible with a loan from the New Development Bank, but if they did know, I think they'd be very proud of their government. They'd be very proud of its participation in BRICS and its support behind the New Development Bank. I'll also mention that India has many known advantages and strengths in industrial competitiveness. We're counting IT services, we're counting softwares, we're counting pharmaceuticals. I'm sure India will tap into the full potential of that competitiveness to expand cooperation with member countries that will, member countries that need the expertise and know-how, and especially the very talented Indian people that make up a very strong workforce. Joshua.
Yes, absolutely. We are running shorter on time, but just very briefly, before we let you go, I just wanted to look at global governance and what changes that BRICS is hoping to bring to that?
You know, I want to point out that when some people hear that BRICS want to advocate for global governance, they immediately think of changing the status quo or replacing the existing international order. And that couldn't be farther from the truth, because first, BRICS was not founded out of a confrontation or replacement mentality. It doesn't serve the interests of BRICS members or the vision of BRICS. What BRICS wants is, first of all, to uphold the UN system, that the authority of the United Nations must be respected, must be upheld. BRICS does believe in addressing international affairs, maintaining world peace and stability by the UN system, but it does see the necessary needs to reform, for example, the existing international financial structure, the components that make up the international financial system, institutions like the World Bank and the IMF. So focus could be on reviewing the equity structure of the World Bank, the quota share structure at the IMF. Both are directly related to the voting rights of the countries in these institutions. The overarching view is that developing countries are poorly represented. There's not sufficient representation for emerging economies. And I do believe emerging economies and developing countries have a right to speak up on this matter, and in line with the changing economic situation, demand that their voices be heard and amplified on the international stage. That is about the global governance reform that BRICS has been advocating, not about replacing anyone, not about subverting any existing international order. I think the right term here is supplementing the international system as we see it, so that more members of the Global South are represented here. Joshua.
Yes, Zhongqi, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us and discuss this upcoming BRICS Summit.